Welcome to episode 213 of the Campus Comics Cast, as we are out with the old and in with the new, DC New Gods, that is. I'm Scott Reed, and I'm joined on this episode by
Mike Atchison.
And in this episode, we will be discussing in some depth the first 6 issues of Jack Kirby's New Gods, alongside the first 6 issues of Ram V's New Gods. I guess the first question is, do you say Ram or Rom? I keep saying Ram.
I hear Rom. I think I used to say Ram. Mm-hmm. But I heard him in enough interviews or people talking about him, and they were pronouncing it Rom V.
Rom V. Usually, whenever I see it pronounced Rom, I expect an H to be in there. So I expect to see R-A-H-M for Rom and R-A-M for Ram. So I don't know.
I mean, I've even heard like the planet Thanagar Ran be pronounced Ron.
Ron. Mm-hmm.
And for this one, I just heard it, and it's a guy's name, so I assume.
Yeah. And I guess it can be pronounced however he wants to pronounce it, but I have not heard an official pronunciation. I probably should get on there and look it up. So, okay, but enough about that. Before we jump into New Gods, and I don't like doing this on our podcast, but I do want to give a shout out to another podcast. It's a podcast called Missing Frames. I was at Superman Celebration last weekend. And this guy comes through and just happens to mention that he's going to be interviewing Tom King like in the next couple of days. I'm like, oh, okay, that's pretty cool. so the the name of the podcast is Missing Frames: Catching Up with Cinema. Now, most of these episodes, when I heard Tom King, that's what interested me. So now most of these episodes I'm not super interested in. I think the general premise of the podcast is that they go watch movies that they should have already watched at some point in their lifetime. Things like Beetlejuice and Aliens, and I'm just skimming through Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and they talk about them for their podcast. Okay, that's movie podcast. But with James Gunn's Superman coming out here in just a few weeks, he is doing a section called Celebrating Superman. And he has interviews with Tom King, Dan Jurgens, Philip Kennedy Johnson, Gene Luen Yang, Jason Aaron, Mike Carlin, and Mark Waid, to name a few. Those are kind of the creators or editors that were working with comics. And then also he does an interview with Morgan Siebert, who is the current proprietor of the Superman Museum in Metropolis, Illinois, which is basically where a lot of the Superman celebration was that I was at last weekend. So again, the name of that podcast is Missing Frames. I'm only listening to the comic book creator ones. I've listened to the Dan Jurgens, the Philip Kennedy Johnson, the Gene Luen Yang. The Tom King apparently just dropped in the last 24 hours, so I still got to listen to Tom King and Jason Aaron and Mike Carlin and Mark Waid, and then I'm not really interested in a movie podcast, but I thought those were cool for Superman getting ready to come out and to have all of those creators talk about both the movie and their work on Superman as a character. So, Missing Frames, Catching Up with Cinema. It's been around for a little bit. They got actually about 20 more episodes than we do, so they got like 231 episodes to our 213.
Two more than one person? Is it a solo deal?
The Celebrating Superman are just him with the creator. I didn't listen to any of the other ones, but I think it's a group of 2 or 3 people who talk about the movies. But I didn't listen to any of those because that's not in my wheelhouse. But I am interested in the creator interviews to talk about Superman. So
that's a good group of creators to interview. Mm-hmm. All of them had a big hand in different.
Yes.
In the last 30 years of Superman.
All right. So enough about Superman, though we will talk about something that appeared in a Superman adjacent title, Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen, and that would be one Jack Kirby's Fourth World. So I think we're going to break this up into the old New Gods and the new Gods. So Mike, I'm going to turn this over to you to talk about Kirby's New Gods.
Yeah, I found this to be really interesting, not just to read, but then to kind of check into the context around the old or the original run of the New Gods. And you know, most people know it came out in the early '70s. Actually, the issues that we're covering, issues 1 through 6, came out between, I think, bi-monthly. So it was from March 1971 to January of 1972. And just to give listeners that haven't read or heard of New Gods, which is, if you're listening to this podcast, there's a good chance you probably have heard of them and probably even read a lot of their stuff. But the New Gods are natives of two planets in, it's more of another dimension than another, than a distant galaxy or something. And they are New Genesis and Apocalypse. And all of the characters and places and the concept with the New Gods are considered to be part of what's called Kirby's fourth world. So these two planets were once part of the same world called Urgrund, and it was, I guess maybe in the third world, which is, another millennia or another generation of these gods, but it was split apart in some cataclysm a millennia ago, and that was when the old gods from the third world had all died in what Kirby called Ragnarok. And we'll see in this new Gods where Ram V has kind of does a spin on that Ragnarok pronunciation. And the entire run was written and drawn by Kirby, but he had Vince Coletta as the inker on issues 1 through 4, and Mike Royer in issues 5 and 6. Again, this went farther than those, those 6 issues, but not by much, maybe 11, I believe. So one of the things, Scott, I wanted to mention is that there are a bunch of first appearances in New Gods #1, but this was actually preceded by 2 different comics by not long, which gave opportunity for other first appearances, the actual first appearances of some of these big characters. So Darkseid, the big bad in the New Gods, first appeared in, like you named that title, Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen, #134, and that came out in October of 1970. And then, even though when you see some places online that New Gods 1 and Forever People 1 were both had the same date of publication, or the cover date is March, or sometimes they would be February/March of 1971. Actually, if you go to Mike's Amazing World of Comics, he has those newsstand or when it was actually on sale dates, and he has evidence, sometimes little clips or JPEG images where he got that information, which is so helpful. But it gave the newsstand dates for New Gods, or I'm sorry, Forever People #1 as December 1st, 1970, and then New Gods #1 December 12th. So it was almost 2 weeks later that the New Gods issue came out. So I found that to be pretty interesting. And
yeah, I think the story with Kirby coming up, because this is, if I remember right, Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen was Kirby's first book at DC when he left Marvel, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And who knows if this may be, a fictionalization or whatever, but basically Kirby just said, give me your lowest selling book, and that's the book that I'll take. And apparently that was Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen, so that is what became. You would never think that Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen is where the fourth world would start. But that's where it starts.
Yeah, and it's interesting because that's where all the germs of the idea of Kirby's ideas of intergang and all of those different earthbound ideas and concepts. But yeah, and really, I love these debates about what counts as a real first appearance or what's a cameo. Darkseid really only appears like on a monitor screen in one panel at the back of the book of issue 134 of Jimmy Olsen. So some people might say, well, that's just a cameo.
Mm-hmm.
And I would tend to agree, but still, it's just fun and interesting, but especially with a character like Darkseid. Darkseid is one of those really long-standing, especially he's the sort of the Galactus or the Doctor Doom of the DC universe.
And a lot of people for that first appearance. I just anymore, because of the disagreements about Wolverine's first appearance, I use Hulk 180 and Hulk 181 as a definition of a cameo. So 180, one page, one panel. It's a big panel. That's a cameo. 181. That's the first appearance. So absolutely, Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen 134 should be listed as the first cameo
Hmm.
of Darkseid, but for whatever reason, who knows?
Yeah. Yeah.
You got to be consistent, I feel like.
Well, it definitely helps. The debate actually helps sell back issues to people
There you
to
go.
collectors.
Just
'Cause
buy
it's
them
like, oh,
both.
I gotta get the cameo now.
Yeah.
So I wanted to run down, and you tell me if there's any of these that you aren't familiar with. I'm sure you are familiar with all of them. These are the sort of the main characters in these 6 issues that I there's more. And it's a very deep bench when it comes to the fourth world, but the main ones are Highfather. He's sort of the father figure of New Genesis. Darkseid, he's the big bad, like I said, and his home stomping grounds is Apocalypse. And then on the side of the good, you've got Light Ray, Orion, and sort of. I mean, I guess Metron is on the side of the good. He's more of neutral, but
Hmm.
he helps the good when he has to. And then you got Black Racer, who's another sort of. He's a lot of, originally I think they portrayed him as a new god, but I think we learn later. Well, he's really not. He's sort of a he's outside that definition a bit. I think we
Kind of a
read that in.
cosmic force.
Right,
Yeah.
correct, yeah. And then on the dark side of things, you've got Desaad, Mantis, Calabac, and Parademons,
Hmm.
and the Deep Six. The only one I really hadn't read much about out of all those was the Deep Six. Are any all of these pretty familiar to you?
Okay, so I mean, the Deep Six not particularly familiar. I've read, and really, I guess my reading of New Gods was like, okay, after back up. I started as not a fan of Jack Kirby.
I think
I'd see
that's a
his
lot of us.
artwork,
Yeah.
and I think I've talked about this before. I was not a fan of Jack Kirby. I didn't like the way he drew shorts for, like the and the way that it wasn't anatomically correct because my first book was Avengers 184, had a Perez cover, John Byrne interiors. Everybody looked proper, looked like the way a person should move and act. So when I saw Kirby, because my first exposure to comics was that a little bit more accurate, more realistic style, I didn't care for it. Plus, at the time, as I was really noticed Kirby, that he was in his Captain Victory, his phase of his career. It didn't appeal to me.
Right.
And then, of course, I read the Mark Evanier book Kirby, which is the biography that Evanier wrote about Kirby. And finally, for the first time, saw Jack Kirby's pencils without any inking, without any coloring, complete 180 of my opinion on
Hmm.
Jack Kirby. So at that point is whenever I went back and started reading all the Fourth World stuff, the Demon, the first few volumes of Commandi, all of that DC stuff. Now, I have not really read much New Gods in between. So I have the original New Gods stuff. I have the Rom or Ram V current
Hmm.
New God stuff. A lot of the stuff in between, haven't really touched it. So to me, Deep Six was in that first run. I don't remember them being particularly present in the initial Kirby run of New Gods. I may just my memory. I've slept since then, so maybe I've just forgotten them. So they are some characters that I don't particularly remember, but they
Well,
obviously were there.
since you brought up that gap, and I think that's the way it is for a lot of people, except that those intervening or inter those years between these two sets of New Gods series that we're
Hmm.
reviewing here, that's where a lot of us got our first experience with the New God characters. So I
Hmm.
do have a short list here, if you'll indulge me, about all
Sure.
of those appearances, not just appearances, mostly just like the different volumes and series that were
Hmm.
most important. But so after this first 6 issues, or after this first run of New Gods by Jack Kirby, it only went to issue 11
Hmm.
for a lot of reasons. I think there was it was still had good reviews, but sales were slipping,
Hmm.
and the Forever People also ended at 11. But Mark Evanier, that you just mentioned, he said in his memoir that New Gods was actually intended to be a limited series, but typical of big companies, they're
Yeah.
like, no, keep it going. We'll even throw in characters like Dead Man or whoever,
Yeah.
to jump the shark type stuff. And Kirby was against it, but then it's like they made him do it, and then it was like petered out on sales,
Hmm.
and I could see how that would have changed how they went about things if they would have just trusted Kirby's instincts with Evanier as his assistant back then.
Yep.
But the chronology of the New Gods appearances since then was that in 1976, so just maybe 4 years later,
Hmm.
the New Gods returned in the final issue of First Issue Special and was written by Jerry Conway and Denny O'Neil and had art by Mike Vosberg, which I always liked Vosberg's art. And they give Orion a new kind of mainstream superhero costume. But then it was just that final issue of First Issue Special was meant to be a launcher. So
Hmm.
later that year, Jeanette Kahn comes in as the publisher DC and wants to revive the entire Fourth World lineup, and they relaunched New Gods with the issue where the storyline was picking up off where First Issue Special left off, but they picked up on issue 12 of
Hmm.
that original run. It was again written by Conway and
I
had
think it had the
Don Newton.
banner "Return of
Yeah,
New
yeah,
Gods." Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yes, yes. I remember that cover. So that was maybe my first time seeing. I don't. I mean, in '77, I was really in my peak, my golden age of comics reading as a kid, and I'm sure I've seen that on the shelf or on the newsstand and grabbed it. It didn't last long. It made it to issue 19, but they did have some unpublished stories that they put into Adventure Comics, like 2 issues of it as a backup feature. Then they showed up in Super Team Family number 15, which I think was the last issue of that in '78. And where I know for sure, if it wasn't reading it in that relaunch a couple years earlier, I know when they appeared, the New Gods appeared in Justice League of America, the crossover
Hmm.
in like 1978 or 79 with the JLA and the JSA, had the great Starlin covers.
Hmm.
And this, as another note, was this, I think 183 was the first of those issues. That was the last issue Dillon drew because he literally died at the drawing table, and that's where George Perez came in to finish that storyline. So, kind of a bittersweet type
Hmm.
thing, but we sort of got our first taste of Perez in the DC universe, or at least with JLA. Then fast forward to 1984, you had Volume Two, which was a reprint series. Had a little bit of original stuff at the end of that series, but I've actually got it in my list of things I want to buy now. I want to see that. I want to get that. I don't have it. Then you got Hunger Dogs, which was a graphic novel at DC. It was all again an instance where Kirby had his
Hmm.
ideas and DC editorial got in the way, and it didn't pan out. It doesn't get a whole lot of great reviews, mostly because of editorial, getting in the
And
way.
also, it was upscaled because it wasn't intended to be a magazine-sized book. So when
Right.
you actually look at it, it's like you got extra margins on the top and bottom just because of the size of it. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
that's
that was included in the Fourth World Omnibus, or
okay.
that yeah.
The
So
the series of Omnibuy that you got.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. And then here's where it gets into some area where I don't know anything about. I read Cosmic Odyssey, which Darkseid was part of that, and
Right.
that was by Jim Starlin and Mike
Starlin. Hmm.
Mignola, but I think it had a couple other new gods in it too. But then right after that in '89 is when there was a New Gods series launched, written by Mark Evanier
Hmm.
and penciled by Paris Cullins. Wasn't aware of that. It ran 28 issues, so
Yeah.
there's another big gap of reading. I don't know
Hmm.
if it's on the DC app or not, but I'm gonna maybe research that. And then in Volume 4 is 1995, another series I wasn't even aware of, written by Tom Pyre and Rachel
Okay.
Pollack. You remember Rachel Pollack from Doom Patrol, I believe. After
Okay.
the Morrison run on Doom Patrol, she picked up, and she's the one that came up with the idea that the boom tube actually, that the new gods are actually huge,
Huge.
giant,
Hmm.
and when they go through the boom tube, it shrinks them down to Earth size, and then it's that was where that came from, I guess.
I think
And
that's
then
been messed with because I think at some point Superman flew to Apokolips. So,
I think so. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So,
I like the idea that it's more of a dimension and not a
hmm
place you can just get in your spaceship
They
and
have
fly
not
to.
been consistent with that for sure.
Right,
So,
right. And then you and I talked last night. We talked about this John Byrne one-shot issue that neither one of us was really aware of, and it was a Dark Side versus Galactus, The Hunger.
hmm
That was in 1995.
okay.
And at first, when I was looking it up, it was like, well, is this like a spoof or is this really an authorized thing? But
Yeah.
it's out there.
Yeah. You can buy it on eBay. We've discovered that last night.
Yeah, yeah. And then the last couple things is where it's worth. It's not even hardly worth. It's The Death of the New Gods by Jim Starlin was just. I just couldn't. It wasn't good at all. It it was what it said it was going to be. Basically, the new gods are all killed by an agent of the source. The source was sort of sentient and wanting to destroy the imperfect fourth world to make room for a more perfect fifth world, and that kind of tied into Final Crisis. And if you remember that too, you definitely had to be. I had to have it broken down to me. Final Crisis was one of the one crisis I just never really could grasp until somebody broke it down to one syllable words for me. It was just crazy.
Did you mention the John Byrne Fourth World?
Well, that was okay. So I think the John Byrne Firth World just was a name change of that 28 issue volume 3 run.
Okay. All right.
I didn't put it in my notes, but I remember reading that. So it was he picked up at some point after Evanier stopped and
Okay.
Cullen stopped, and he renamed it to Kirby's Firth World.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I just
Yeah,
was. I knew that was something, and I didn't hear. I didn't hear that specifically in your list because because
yeah,
Byrne kind of would revamp things periodically. But I also haven't read that either. So, but now I think I need to go back and read at least this volume
yeah.
of
If they ever come up with
Kirby.
or come out with that New Gods movie that they were talking about, that'd be a good time to maybe dip into some of the other. The last thing is that in the New 52, it's also a very forgettable retcon, is where in 2011 they decided that Darkseid first appeared in Justice League #4, kind of for eliminating everything that was in the past. So that not isn't even continuity anymore. So again, forgettable. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
all I
But
had to just kind of catch us up between this original run and the Rom V run.
yeah. But Darkseid has just become the big bad of the DC universe. Whenever they
Overused.
need,
Oh yeah.
yeah, when they need a big bad guy, he is the one. So
Yeah. I just pounded my fist on my desk when I first seen it. One of those iterations of the Justice League where they were all like going out in space. He had Cyborg and Starfire and whoever else. They had Darkseid as a member, and I always hate that. It's one thing to have like one of your these
You're,
not really bad, like Harley Quinn or whatever,
yeah,
and bring them into a team. But, oh, come on, really?
yeah.
So yeah, so there you have it.
All right. Well, you ready to start breaking it down by issue? You want to jump
Yeah.
into issue 1?
Yeah, so let's start it off with New Gods #1 from 1971. It's titled Orion Fights for Earth. Very apt title. The prologue briefly provides the origin of the twin planets of New Genesis and Apocalypse. We meet Orion and Light Ray in Supertown, a glorious city floating above New Genesis, and we get a glimpse of their personalities, which will be consistent for decades. We are introduced to Highfather and Metron in his Mobius chair and the concept of the Source. The Source leaves a message in fire on Highfather's wall. Orion to Apocalypse, then to Earth, then to war. Orion journeys to Apocalypse, fights off parademons, and infiltrates Darkseid's inner sanctum. He finds that Darkseid is currently off planet but has left Calabac to defend his throne. Metron shows up and takes out Calabac before Orion can, then reveals to him Darkseid's plan to scan the minds of all the people of Earth in search of the anti-life equation. Orion rescues some humans already trapped in Darkseid's lair, then journeys by boom tube to Earth and gets ready to fight the dreaded Darkseid. So, yeah, that's. You think I'd read this over and over? You think I wouldn't be stumbling over my words as much as I did there at the end?
Hey, it happens. I had to do the intro twice, for something I was just reading. So, hey, it happens.
The, I, this was an iconic first issue. I think it didn't give everything away, but it certainly gave you enough to go, wow, this is a really cool new universe, so to speak.
Hmm.
But yet, oh, this universe can come to Earth, and they have to go through this special process. Go through the boom tube, and it sets the stage really well. I
Well, that's one of the things
really,
that Kirby, I always felt like Kirby did better than just about any creator, is that he created so much without explaining so many things, that it gave so many
hmm
opportunities for people to come along after and expand on without taking anything away from what was established by Kirby initially. So,
right. Oh,
I,
and I mean, just to that point, Metron was hinting at Orion's true origins on, I think it was page 9, about, because it doesn't come out. We learn later that,
hmm
Orion's actually the son of Darkseid, the biological son of Darkseid, but
hmm
was raised by Isaiah, the High Father, in that well known sun swap to keep peace between the two worlds.
hmm poor Scott Free.
Yeah, I know, poor guy. Had to be raised by Darkseid.
Whew.
Yeah.
Okay,
I do. You go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, okay, so you were talking earlier about, and I thought this too, that the cataclysmic event was Ragnarok, which implies that the third world gods were the Norse gods, but that's not explicitly said anyplace in the first issue, correct?
No, it's not. In fact, the right. I mean, I think I got that from online, one of the
Mm-hmm.
fandom or Wikipedia or something.
Yeah.
It really it's taking away from, I'm fairly certain that Kirby had pitched a very similar idea at Marvel with
Mm-hmm.
the Asgardians,
Mm-hmm.
and it didn't. I don't know what happened. I didn't research enough into it, but this was originally a concept that was supposed to fit into the lore of Thor and his whole group.
That's what I thought. But I just want to make sure I didn't miss something where it explicitly
Yeah.
said
The only thing that
Ragnarok in
made
the
me
story.
say that is because I remember in reading the Rom V, seeing that. Yeah, I don't know if you noticed it or not, but if not, I'll wait till we get to it and point out the Ragnarok reference.
Okay, I apparently missed it because I don't have any notes specific to that.
Okay.
So
Okay. All right.
yeah, so you have to like me what I missed there. So
All right.
um,
Uh, again, the boom tube was a really cool concept, but again, it's like Darkseid. It's overused, I think, these days. Now you got Cyborg, who somehow has boom
has
tube
boom tube.
technology, and he can just magically transport people from one place to the other. But it also compares to the rainbow. To me, the Rainbow Bridge
Mm-hmm.
between Asgard and Midgard.
Yeah. Well, if I okay, so in it's my understanding in Cyborg's new origin, where he got his technology was his technology came from as an adaptation from a mother box, as
Yeah.
opposed to just being a cyborg
Yeah.
that was something built, which is how he got the boom tube
Right.
technology.
Right. Oh yeah, I don't mind the origin, I guess, of it. I just feel like it made it less special because he could
Hmm.
whip out. He didn't even have to have the mother box. It was
Nope.
part of him.
Yeah.
I don't know if it wasn't the Atomic Knights wasn't anything that Kirby worked on, but one thing, seeing that dog cavalry that Darkseid had, they were like huge dogs that could be ridden like horses. It reminded me of those giant Dalmatians that the Atomic Knights would ride.
Couple things that I feel like have been changed. If one is the parademons. In this
hmm
issue, it's pretty clear that the parademons are just guys in green costumes.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, yeah.
and they become literal demons as the story moves forward. And then the source, it really seems like the source is here in New Genesis, but as the new gods progress, the source becomes a source wall that is kind of out someplace in the universe that
Yeah.
they have to go to separately. So I feel like
Yeah.
those are a couple of things that have kind of been modified quite a bit. So
Yeah, I mean it's I didn't recall if I had ever remember reading that Isaiah, that the High Father actually had a room where he could you know, could read what the source was going to message him. It
hmm
just seemed a little bit too convenient. It's even later in this series that Metron goes to the actual source wall, or what what is like the maybe the early version of the source wall, and we'll
Hmm.
get to that in whatever issue it is. But it's yeah, I'm sure it was again that might be the downside of he left it quite open for
Yep.
interpretation. Okay, if you're ready, we can go to New Gods 2.
We sure can.
All right, Oh Deadly Darkside. This prologue expands on the setting of New Genesis and Apocalypse, and I just mentioned those prologues because they are kind of helpful in setting the stage on all of these new places and things. Light Ray is eager to join his friend Orion in the fight on Earth, but Highfather won't allow it. Orion, with the humans he rescued in tow, finds Darkseid and is attacked by Brola, an apocalypse warrior with a shock prod and a hand of stone, in an apartment in Metropolis. He defeats Brola, who phases out along with Darkseid. We learn the names of the four humans as Claudia Shane, Harvey Lockman, Dave Lincoln, and Victor Lanza. Back at his headquarters, Darkseid confers with his lieutenant Desaad about discovering Earth people who can comprehend the anti-life equation, which Darkseid says will allow him to control all free will. He allows Desaad to use a fear machine that strikes panic into the inhabitants of Metropolis in hopes of smoking out a mind with the anti-life properties they seek. Meanwhile, Orion shows his newfound allies a mother box and briefs them about Apocalypse and Darkseid's agents, such as Mantis and the Deep Six, when suddenly the fear machine is unleashed on the populace of Earth. Using his mother box, Orion tracks and finds the fear machine and destroys its projector beam. Darkseid tells Desaad that no suitable minds have been found among those victimized. The four abductees then agree to work with Orion. And that's it for issue 2.
I like that whole fear thing in Metropolis, which Kirby used later in Captain America when he had the Mad Bomb.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it seems like I mean, it allows for more stories to be built around it. For
Hmm.
Darkseid to be searching using a device. There was a lot of devices used, but it it is very typical of Darkseid. I I don't think I mentioned, but it's only the first few issues. But I this era was kind of known for those photo background on the covers,
Hmm.
and I just that first issue of the New Gods and the second and third, they have that sort of a it's either the Starry Night, like that first issue with Orion coming at
Hmm.
you, and then you got the city of Metropolis. Yeah, it's all kind of cool, I think.
Sorry, my camera went crazy on me again.
Oh,
There we go.
and I guess I
The
never really quite learned anywhere just the dynamics of how Apocalypse and New Genesis worked, or were they two planets in the same solar system? But it seems that they're twin planets, and they don't orbit each other as they orbit whatever sun is out there. Apocalypse is always behind New Genesis, so it's always in the shadow, never gets any sunlight. So I thought that's an interesting thing that I don't know that's ever been expanded on, but that alone seems like it makes Apocalypse no wonder it's the way it is. I mean,
yeah.
it's just always in darkness and it's just forced to be in the shadow of the bright and sunny New Genesis. Oh, and whenever Highfather was wanting to protect Light Ray, that's
Mhm.
also a consistency going forward.
Going forward, yeah. In the new gods.
Yep. Yep.
I don't really have a whole lot of comments on issue 2.
Okay. Yeah, it's one of these deals where it seems like I kind of limited my comments because if you really want to get into a deep dive, we'd be here all day
Yeah.
because there's a lot to talk about. So I'm keeping it to just some notables. So New Gods 3.
Well,
Death
hold
is
on.
the
One more thing on
Oh,
2. One more thing on 2.
okay.
It's just
All
it's
right.
crazy too, like how these villains change. It's like I can't imagine in a modern comic book where Darkseid shows up that you just find him hanging out in somebody's living room. That's
Right.
just not gonna be how he's gonna make an appearance
No.
anymore. And
No.
that's how he makes an appearance here in New Gods 2. It's like, yep, I'm
Yeah.
just sitting here and sitting on the chair waiting for you to show up. So
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's ever been. It seems like that's an iconic thing to see him in that chair just hanging out because he's such a. I mean, he's a scary. The design of him is just perfect for scaring the bejesus out of you. All right, New Gods 3. Death is the Black Racer. The Black Racer, a sky skiing harbinger of death to the people of New Genesis, pursues Light Ray, telling him to prepare for his touch. On Earth, Orion and his allies construct a secret identity for Orion, giving him the last name, you can guess it, Orion, Ryan. Ingenious, or maybe not. Back on New Genesis, just before Black Racer can touch Light Ray and end his life, he is interrupted by Metron and sent to Earth by way of the boom tube. There, he stops an inner-gang thug from killing Willie Walker, a paraplegic black Vietnam vet. The racer merges with Walker's body, giving him mobility. The old Black Racer is now dust, and Willie inherits the role. Orion, now disguised as a human, and Dave Lincoln, who happens to be a private investigator, track down Darkseid's latest weapon, which is about to be activated by Intergang on Darkseid's orders. They stop it from happening, but Sugarman, the gangster Black Racer stopped from shooting Willie Walker, escapes with it. But not for long, because Black Racer intervenes and sends the device and Sugarman into space. Orion uses his mother box to destroy it above the Earth where it can't disable all communications, which was its intent. Afterwards, the Black Racer separates from Willie Walker's body and leaves him in his bed to re-merge with him when he is needed. So yeah, this was the first appearance of Black Racer, and I've always been confused about what he's basically death, right? So
Yes, yeah.
yeah, and mixed with the Silver Surfer. So
Ski
and he's
instead of a
fast.
surfboard. Yeah.
Right. So I get the idea of maybe that constant race between him and Light Ray because Light Ray is also super fast and but nobody can outrace death, so eventually he will touch him. But I was confused as was Black Racer really going to kill Light Ray, or was it just a I don't know, was he just toying with him? I
We
couldn't
get a
really
little
grasp that.
expansion on that when we get back to Ram V's. So we can talk a little bit more detail about the relationship between Light Ray and Black Racer in
Yeah.
the new gods.
Yeah, okay. Did okay, Scott, do you think Sugarman died in space when that device went off? Because they really don't address that either. And we know that from later issues, Orion doesn't have a problem killing.
I don't remember exactly the part that you are talking about. Let me see if I can find that
It
page.
wasn't really greatly told in the panels, but the
Oh,
way
where he throws the truck, right?
yeah, the truck that had Sugarman in it and that device that was supposed to shut off all communications up into space, and then he could remote control destroy it. But doesn't really address whether Sugarman survived that.
I would say probably not, but it's
Yes.
obviously off panel enough that he could have if they needed
Right,
him for
yeah.
a story down the road. So
I am hereby daring a DC editor or writer to somehow come up with a new version of Sugarman because this character was. I mean, if you want to step back in time to the early '70s, all you got to do is see Sugarman and here he's a gangster and it's it's just it yeah it
it's
just I could
a little bit of stereotypical, is what
oh
you
my
might
God,
want to
yeah
say.
I mean
Yeah,
straight
yeah.
out of the early '70s, yeah. But yeah, but as they say, all stereotypes have a germ of truth. So let's see. I think that was really all. That's all I had, other than that consistent like lifelong race between Light Ray and Black Racer.
hmm
I mean, that's really all I had with this. Yeah,
You mentioned it was the first appearance of Black Racer. I guess we should have said what issue one was the first appearance of Orion and first appearance
oh
of
yeah.
Light Ray. And
Hmm.
was Mantis in the first issue, or was he in the second issue?
He actually first appeared in Forever People.
Oh, was he in Forever People first? Okay, cool.
Yep, and he's a really cool design too. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, a lot of good Kirby designs.
Just popped in my head, so I'll mention it now before I forget about it. But one of the coolest uses of a lot of the New Gods characters was in the Young Justice series that was written by the late great Peter David.
Yeah.
So like the first couple of seasons of that, they use a lot of New Gods influence in those
Yeah.
stories. So our
Yeah.
fourth world
Yeah.
influence in those stories.
Well,
So
they inherited the Forever People's super bike or whatever they called it. Was it the super
hmm
bike?
I think so. Yeah,
And yeah,
it was.
yeah, they sort of inherited that, I think, as their way of. I just love that. Those are very nice touches where a creator of the level of Peter David can pull in a concept or a device or something from way back into a new. I mean, it's completely new. I don't know. I don't remember how they came up with it or how they got it, but that makes me want to go back and read all those all those Young Justice issues.
Well, this was in the animated series that was on HBO
Oh,
Max, is what I'm referring to.
oh,
So
I
yeah,
see. Okay,
yeah.
okay,
All right, issue 4.
all right. Issue 4 is Orion's Gang and the Deep Six. This issue opens with Metron and a young protege named Isak fleeing two dinosaur-looking creatures on a far-flung primitive planet. They return to New Genesis and Highfather, who tells them that Sigrun, an oceanic new god, has fallen. The body of Sigrun is found by the police in Orion. Orion deduces that the forces from Apocalypse have found a way of screening their operations from a mother box. To find the jammer, he enlists the help of his four new friends from Earth against Intergang. They collectively use the mother box to pick up a clue from the mind of an inter-gangster named Snaky Doyle at a pool hall. They trick him into exposing the jamming device. Orion destroys it, then seeks out the Deep Six, the murderers of Sigrun, and is caught by Slig, one of the Deep Six members. So that's one of the shorter ones I got there, but this is where it's getting into the point where I don't know if the Deep Six don't appeal to me. They're less, I don't know, inventiveness in their design, a bunch of bad kind of aquatic
Mm-hmm.
creatures, and I don't know. Even though I like Aquaman, stories set just in the ocean seem to limit some things, but I know there's
And
going
they,
to be some people out there that will disagree.
we get like 2 issues of the Deep
Oh yeah,
Six.
well,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Or I'm
three
still on the
actually.
previous issue. Yeah. So I just an aside on Instagram, I have a follower that's tag is Big Barda's Mother Box.
Oh no!
Yeah. So
Oh,
you do with that what you want, I
oh
guess.
God! Oh lordy! Uh, well,
Moving
Big
on.
Barda is yeah. Moving on. Okay. I don't even know what to say. I do know what to say, but I better not. Okay, so yeah, that's really all I had. I mean, I can't say I've ever. I mean, there was a scene in in this issue, Scott, where the source actually collected Seagrin's body and
Mhm.
sort of like absorbs it back into the source. You see that. So I guess there's some instances where Black Racer might
Racer.
not be involved. You
Yeah.
know, I don't know.
I don't know either. It's kind of interesting. It's like some new gods he's there, some new gods he's not. Uh, is Black Racer part of the source? I mean you could go on and extrapolate all these different ideas. You know, it's
Yeah,
like Black Racer could just be a manifestation of the source, and
yeah,
why does he need Willie Walker if he's a? It's just this whole story, the whole New God series becomes very quickly Earth centric, which
mm-hmm,
I guess as most things even the Marvel and the DC universe become. It's like you have all
yeah.
these ultimate superpowered beings at a galactic level, but it all comes back to Earth. So
Yeah, and I have a note here that says I liked those stories a little bit less than the first three, just
hmm
because you lose a little bit of that fantastical nature, the grand scope of it when you're set on Earth. And I get it though. I mean, yeah, I don't know. Now the exception is that last issue, which we'll get to. But I
yeah,
mean, it's
I
still
really
set on
don't
Earth,
need
but
to see
there's
Orion running around as a private investigator.
oh
He's
no,
got
no,
bigger things to be doing. So
yeah, yeah. It seemed a little bit more mundane, and I'd rather see him out on his astral harness, which and I'd love to have a model of that, something I can even if it didn't work, I'd just stand on it.
I'm sure your wife would love that, sitting up in your
Oh,
living room.
yeah.
You'd be
Yes.
watching TV. I gotta get on the Astro harness.
Oh no, I need somebody to design me one of those. Yeah. Good for good for cosplay, but you couldn't really carry it around with you very easily.
Be on wheels, have somebody behind you pushing you or
Right.
pulling you.
Yeah.
You
Oh
know?
yeah. Oh yeah. Man, somebody has to have done that before. Any other comments about issue 4?
Not on issue 4.
Okay. All right. So New Gods number 5. This is where Mike Royer started doing the inking, and the title of the story is called Spawn.
Which, by the way, looks amazingly similar to the Spawn
Yes.
logo that you see on modern comics.
I have that exact comment. Yeah, I was like, okay, McFarlane, we know where you got your design for that.
Mhm. Well, he
That's great.
readily admits that Kirby is an influence. So
Okay, yeah. Oh, it's not a bad thing. I think it's a
no,
good
no, yeah.
look for that word. Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay, so Metron is traveling the far reaches of space and nears the final barrier in the Promethean galaxy, where he witnesses giant-sized creatures that were once pursuers of all knowledge, like himself. But in their attempt, were bound to the source wall for all time. We are then introduced to Sergeant Terrible Turpin of the Metropolis Police Force, who is investigating the mystery of Intergang's actions. He questions private investigator Dave Lincoln on this mysterious Orion figure that's now in his city. Shortly thereafter, Dave reports back to his 4 friends. Well, I guess it's his 3 friends now, because he's one of the 4. 2 of the group decide that they need to get on with their own lives, but will be there for Orion when needed. But Dave and Claudia stay invested in searching for the Deep Six with Orion. Orion, now captured by Slig of the Deep Six, witnesses Slig's power to turn ordinary creatures into monstrosities. However, Orion is able to escape by activating his astral force remotely and breaking free and knocking out Slig. Orion soon discovers the Deep Six's ship and suspects their plans, while Turpin continues his investigation by talking to one of his men injured in the previous issue. As Dave and Claudia fret, they hear the thunder of a boom tube, which brings Calabac to Earth, bent on destruction. Meanwhile, in a berserker rage, Orion destroys the Deep Six's mother box and kills Slig before escaping to the surface. So yeah, this is where I was like, man, Orion's just, there's no compunction at all. I didn't even know he could destroy a mother box necessarily, but he threw old Slig down into that big pit. So, which, yeah.
Okay, so just a couple of things. It's crazy how we get the term celestial here early in the story, and then of course when Jack Kirby goes back to Marvel, well then that gives us the Eternals, and of course who feature the Celestials, which are these giant creatures. So you have to wonder how many of the ideas that he put into Eternals would have eventually showed up in New Gods had the transition back to Marvel not have occurred.
If Marvel and DC could do a crossover right, they could do a whole lot more than what they're doing right now with Deadpool and Batman. I know I'm saying that before even reading the book, but
yeah, I think that is purely for sales is what that one is. And then this is the second time that we get to see Orion's true form, as opposed to the form that he has. Where he is pretty, somebody even comments how good looking he is, and then of course you see his true form for the second time because he is a spawn of Darkseid. So
I don't know. I think I have an uncle that has a big bushy eyebrow like that. He probably needs a mother box to transform him too. I've actually got an action figure of Orion, and he's got 2 heads. One head has the good-looking face. The other one has that sort of mad monster berserker face. Yeah, and a little mother box that he can hold to his face to change it. So
I also like in this issue you've got the Kirby self-portrait of him at the drawing board. Drawing New Gods. I assume that this was drawn by Kirby. So
yeah, he's done that before, hasn't he?
I think several times.
Yeah, or either that or other people have done that. Images of him. It makes me think of that Fantastic Four. Annual. Mark Waid and Waringo
I think so.
did that, where Fantastic Four somehow go to. We covered it, I know, on one of our
Hmm.
episodes, but turned out Kirby was sort of the guy pulling the levers
Yeah.
up in heaven or in this dimension. So
Well, I think was that the one above all? No, that's
I think
the. Oh
I don't
man,
remember.
something along that lines. So
Yeah.
yeah.
How about a sign of the times with that guy in traction in the hospital smoking a cigar?
Oh, yeah. There you go.
Yeah, and Turpin's lighting the cigar for him.
Yeah.
Lord, can't believe it's 50 years ago. There's a lot of changes, a lot of differences. There was also that short story featuring Fastback, which is another
Yes.
speedster. New God.
Mhm. I don't
Okay,
have anything
if
else. I don't have anything else for four. So
okay, neither do I. We'll move on to the last issue. New God 6, The Glory Boat. A giant pink spiked whale. Yes, you heard me right. A giant pink spiked whale. One of the Deep Six's mutations is attacking ships and submarines throughout the ocean. Even a privately owned yacht is not spared, leaving the three survivors, a father and his son and daughter, on a life raft found by Orion, who tethers them to his astro harness and pulls them to safety. While doing so, he finds a wooden ship with a bandaged figure bound to the top of it. When he frees the figure, he is surprised to find Light Ray, who has snuck to Earth against Highfather's wishes. Together, the fivesome investigate the craft that Light Ray's captors had tied him to. All the while, the father constantly berates his son for being a pacifist. Inside, they discover a mutated horror called Ascender, an organic detector that the Deep Six mutated from sea life. It attacks Orion and Light Ray as they find out it is the brain of the Leviathan attacking the ships. Light Ray uses his powers to change the creature's atoms, reducing it to a basic cube-shaped life form. He imprints his mother box on it, making it a caller instead of a sender, so that they can use it to reverse the actions of the Beast and the Deep Six. Meanwhile, the Deep Six figure out what has been done to their sender as Light Ray and Orion search for them in the sea. The man and his children are discovered by Jafar, one of the surviving Deep Six. Despite all of his previous bluster about what makes a man, the father goes into hysterics and at the appearance of the monster, leaving the son to go into action. The son attacks Jafar to protect his sister and father, but loses his life in doing so. Orion and Light Ray kill Jafar and discover the dead son and a despondent and psychologically broken father on the craft. Light Ray takes the son's body to the hold of the ship, and Orion places the daughter on his astro harness, sending her to safety. The new gods defeat the remaining Deep Six and their Leviathan. Orion and Light Ray make a grand exit on a rocket transformed from the Life Cube by Light Ray, while the father refuses to leave his son and remains stranded on what's left of the burned ship. Wow, this story, while it has some underlying resonance, it zigged and it zagged. It
yes,
made for a
just a little
hard
bit.
synopsis. Yeah.
Yeah. However, this page, the what's referred to as the glory boat. All right.
Yeah.
Well, what I refer to as the glory boat page, which is where you've got Light Ray on the giant missile weapon
Yeah.
and Orion there beside it. This is probably the image that changed my mind about Kirby because it is
Oh.
shown in that Evanier Kirby book just the
Oh,
pencils,
really?
and it is amazing. So, it's just like one of the things that I've done recently is some publishers have started releasing graphite editions of some Kirby stuff. So, like Silver Star and Destroyer Duck and Captain Victory.
Yeah.
Anytime there's an option for a graphite version of anything of Kirby's, it is 100% worth the purchase because it is amazing how much better it looks just the pencils than when it's inked and or colored. It's just
Oh, really? Wow.
yeah, it's just crazy how much better it looks in my opinion. So and again, it's the pencils that changed my mind about Kirby. So and this is probably the page
Yeah.
from that book that really was the kicker.
I can see that. I can see
Yeah.
because it sort of for me being the last page or one of the last pages, it
Hmm.
sort of redeemed some of the less great qualities of the story. But yeah, it's an amazing image. Can't imagine. I mean, and is that glory boat? Is that missile or rocket or whatever? That does that appear anywhere else later? Do you know?
Not that I remember.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because it
no, I
seems
don't
like
remember
another
it.
one of those great concepts or inventions that could be, somehow reused.
Yeah,
I don't know.
no, it was just that scene though. So, and it's been homage time and time again. So, sometime
Yeah.
I was last year I was at an event at a museum in Evansville, Indiana, and John K. Snyder was there, and he has a cover for one of the issues of Suicide Squad that he did, and it is
Hmm.
very reminiscent of this. So I asked him, I was like, well, was that a deliberate homage to this glory boat from Kirby? He's like, well, he didn't remember it,
Oh wow.
but
Yeah.
I mean, it could have been one of those, subconscious things, that happened. So,
And where did you see it again? Where did you see that image that looked
so it's
like
an
an
issue of
homage?
Suicide Squad, one of the
Okay.
covers that John K. Snyder did. And if you really need to know the issue number, I can look it up here at
No,
some
I mean
point.
we can.
But
I definitely want to take a look at that myself now.
yeah, just but when you see it,
Yeah.
whenever you are familiar with
Okay.
one and then see the other, it's just like, yeah, that's definitely the glory boat. So
I mean, and at, I mean, looking at, I mean, you've got the ever happy and happy. I want to say happy-go-lucky and joyful Light Ray on top of it, saying,
hmm
"If we must die, let New Genesis live." And he's up there, just got his hands spread. And then you got Orion below him. So if we go to the source, you demons go with us. A little bit more negative, but he's got that fist out in that classic Kirby way.
hmm
I've seen Captain America drawn so many times by Kirby like that with that fist out in front of him. Oh,
hmm and
awesome.
enlarged to show that it's coming towards the
Yeah.
reader, and
Yes.
yeah,
That
and that's part of
foreshortening
that's
he
part
had
of why I
mastered.
never understood with Kirby. It's like you just look at that, it's like, oh man, that's just so out of proportion. But then it's like, no, that is to show that it's coming towards you, and
Yeah.
and
The three dimension aspect of it.
exactly kind of make it
Hmm.
look a little bit more a little three dimensional. So
Yeah. I really am a little stumped as like, okay, guys, I mean, they could go back and get that old man that's tied to the
yeah,
boat. I'm like, really?
yeah,
Yeah, he was kind of a jerk, and it was a sign of the times again. You had this big generational gap that Kirby was
hmm
trying to show that, about highlighting pacifism. This was towards the end of the Vietnam War, or maybe it was after the actual, the end of it. But it wasn't that long ago that they had all of the you had a lot of PTSD and a lot of trauma,
hmm
and you had a lot of people that were against the fighting, and pacifism really came to the fore. And it was just a less really tolerant age, so a lot of people that believed in nonviolence, they were ridiculed or ostracized. And you think
hmm
about Hawk and the Dove, that probably
yep.
came out not too far before this either by Ditko. So interesting concept, but again, they didn't have to leave that poor guy
No,
on the sinking ship or whatever he's on.
all right, you ready to try to decipher Rom V's New Gods?
I think so. Let's do it.
Okay, all right. So we have issue one of Rom V's New Gods. This came out what? It's still in production, so it started what about 6 months ago. So was it
Yeah,
January or was it December of last year? Was the
I
first
think it was
issue?
December because I somewhere I seen it's a 2024 was when it first started, so I'm
Okay.
assuming December.
Now it is my understanding, and I thought I saw this in one of the pre-orders, that this has become a 12-issue series. However, there's no indication of that on any of these covers that it is a 12-issue series.
Was it originally intended to be a 6 issue or
I
ongoing
I
or
think it was originally. I would have said it's just like it is. It's ongoing until it's not.
yeah,
So I think
yeah.
at some point this has changed to a 12, but again, it's not been in the last pre-orders. I think it was two
Hmm.
pre-orders ago that I swear I saw 12 issues.
Okay.
So, but who knows? All right. So writer Ram V, pages 1 through 4, penciled by Jorge Nornes, and Evan Cagle
Fornes.
does the majority of the art for most of these first 6 issues. But there's a fill-in artist on, I believe, every single issue. If I don't think
Yeah.
there's one that he doesn't have a second artist on. And we'll talk about that as we go through. But sometimes the art works well, and sometimes it does not. All right. So, all right. So issue one, if I can get there in my notes. So, at the death of Darkseid, spoilers, one of the last of the old gods, Amax-Azu, returns to the source which Metron is studying and receives a prophecy. And this is the prophecy. When the eldest ichor is spilt, shall the darkness beckon fall upon the age of gods. In the dwindling hours shall come hence the last avatar made for who await the eternal. With opulences eight laid upon hands, the great steed shall ride, and on its hooves shall follow the reckoning of all. So over on New Genesis, Metron visits the High Father. With Darkseid dead, the balance of the universe has fallen, and a new hand of darkness seeks decimation. A child has been born on Earth, not quite, that may be the savior or the doom of the new gods. As Metron leaves, Highfather calls for his champion as Lightray arrives, but this is not a task for Lightray, but Orion, who is off of New Genesis battling parademons. On Earth, we see how Scott-Free and Barda are struggling with raising a child. Orion informs Scott that the Highfather has sent him to Earth to kill this new child, and he is giving Scott-Free 7 days to save the child. In India, a group of mercenaries under Max Lord is chasing a husband and wife carrying a child. As the father is shot in the leg, the child transforms, and we are reminded of the prophecy as the child transforms into the last avatar made. All right, I'll give you the first shot at some comments on this one, Mike.
Well, I mean, already it does introduce some new characters, at least new to me. I even tried to look up some of them. Amaxazu, that's the very first that prologue. She's like strapped to. I don't know. I'm not even sure what's going on there. It's this is where it's referencing Amaxazu had willed the stars into being. And so I'm assuming Amaxazu maybe was an old god and had witnessed the great cataclysm. So I'm sort of paraphrasing what it says there. So that's a new character to me.
It is to me as
Akala.
well.
Okay. Akala is another figure that was new. He appears to be Highfather's like protector, always around there for him. I think at some point we see that he has some sort of warping or transporting powers. But yeah, so that's and the something else is that this art, most of this Kegel art, most of this issue has Kegel art, and it's the aliens. When I look at those parademons, they look truly alien. They don't look corny. They look scary. It's just something that I enjoyed seeing. And this little comment here is just gonna carry over all the way through until I understand this. I'm not clear why the Highfather ordered Orion to kill that baby on Earth, unless he feared that baby was gonna maybe take over as the new Highfather, or take over something, or it's a little bit unclear. Maybe it's meant to be that way.
Well, I think based on the Highfather's, so how I'm reading that is Highfather's interpretation of the prophecy, which the prophecy seems to be very non-specific, but Highfather takes the prophecy as if this child lives, then the new gods are going to die. Now, not everybody takes that prophecy to mean the same thing. So that's why, in my opinion, Highfather is acting as he is, because he believes that the child is going to result in the fall of the new gods.
Yeah.
And his goal is to prevent that from happening. I'm just going to say that I love this first issue. After I read this first issue, I was extremely excited for this series. Now, that being said, this feels very dense. Now, I don't know if that's me or if that's just Ron B's writing, but there's a lot to digest. I mean, I was literally one paragraph into this story, and I had to start looking up words.
Oh yeah.
So So not since Amaxazu willed the stars into being, had they trembled so far, far away, past yada parsecs of space, Amaxazu had witnessed a great cataclysm, a sundering so powerful it was seen even here, where she had cradled the universe in galaxy superclusters, had spilled from her amnion. I had no idea what amnion was. Now,
and I still don't. I didn't look that one up.
Well, I did look that one up, and it's the membrane of an embryo. So
Okay.
amniotic, I assume that's where amniotic
Oh,
sac
right.
comes
Okay.
from.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I'm just first page, first panel. I'm having to look up words. So
Yeah. And in a way, some of it that's okay. Like I
yeah,
know what
yeah,
ichor means. It's a
yes.
rarely used word, but then
Mm-hmm.
you don't know if a new word is a name of a first-time reveal character, or is it a just a concept? Or I think Ram V might. I don't know if he's for Indian descent, but a lot of his books are set in India, and there is a
Mm-hmm.
lot of that here. There's references to Indian locales and things like that. So references that I had to do the same and read it and
Yeah.
read and look them up and see where they were and just to get a little bit more context. But it's not impenetrable. It's just
No,
a little bit more work. You definitely need to read these more than once.
more than once, 100%. Now, sprinkled throughout these issues, we get some excerpts from something called the Prometheus Codex. This is written
Hmm.
by Himon, which, as far as I know, is a new character that gets introduced later in this series. I don't remember him on from anything prior to this, though again my reading from the most of the middle of New Gods is pretty limited. So to my understanding, this is a new character, but it kind of is going to explain some things about what's going on. So the source, in theory, they say is a self-referential void. So it's basically pure information. So thus they're using the source to kind of define the anti-life or the anti-source, which would be the destruction, I guess, of everything. So
Yeah.
he's basically saying you can define something by its opposite. So darkness can be defined as the absence of light. So it's kind of trying to provide some definition for some very nebulous concepts that we have in New Gods.
Yeah, he's actually been around a while. He was Mr. Miracle's like mentor on Apocalypse Hyman or
Oh,
Haman. I
really?
don't know how to pronounce it.
In
I've
the
always said
original
Hyman in my
Kirby
head.
series or in later
Somewhere along
on?
the way, might have been in Mr. Miracle or in one of the Kirby books. But
Okay.
I know the name. I couldn't remember when I first seen it. I couldn't remember where I know him from. His design isn't the same. That's new.
Okay.
But he actually invented the mother box, and
Yes, and we see
yeah.
that later on in this
Yeah.
series as well. So,
Yeah. So,
um,
but the part I remember is him being like on Apocalypse and helping Mr. Miracle.
okay. On page 5 of this, we have a very interesting art design page. It really, even though it's not, it kind of reminds me of that Da Vinci, where
Oh,
you've got the guy spread. Even though it's
the
not anything on this page, but
yeah,
that's what it reminds me of. But you have
yeah.
this very interesting character set that kind of is in this spiral in the middle. But this is the prophecy that Metron receives, and fortunately, it is deciphered for us. So if you're also one of those people who likes it when they have the little character, I was expecting there to be a reference page at some place in here where it showed
Oh,
what the
yeah.
individual characters mean. But you can actually match this up character for character with the prophecy that's above this image in red.
Now that would be a cipher if someone really had time and wanted
Hmm.
to do that. That would be
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. But I mean, you can see like the L because like it ends in all, and the last two characters are those two cross-looking characters. So that's
So
the
that,
two L's. So
yeah,
you can kind of you could make the chart if you wanted to.
right. That's cool. It's a great design. I agree with what you say about that Da Vinci. People will know what you're talking about. It's the
Hmm.
human with
Spread, yeah.
legs and arms spread out and all that design around it. Yeah,
Uh,
it's I think the Kegel artwork is just it reminds me a bit of shoot. You remember the Mr. Miracle series where you had two different artists. One was doing the art on
hmm.
Earth, and one was, or no, I'm thinking of
No,
Adam
that's a
Strange.
Strange
The
Adventures, yeah.
Strange Adventures. Yeah.
Hmm.
Now I can't think of the artist's name, but he
Oh,
was the one that did all.
Declan
N- no,
Shalvey,
he
and
has like a
then
nickname or a shortened version of. But anyway,
okay.
he did all of the Ran scenes from the
Hmm.
past of Adam Strange, and that's what Kegel sort of reminds me. But this is a little bit more elaborate. The colors are just amazing. Um, yeah, so that's really all I got. Just general awe. I'm like you. This first issue is really cool. Yeah, and there's a page where you've got Orion again transforming as his regular, his evil or dark side face to his more contained normal human face.
So, Mitch Gerards and Evan Doc Shaner are the artists for Strange Adventures that you were trying to
Doc
trying to
Shane
come
is
up
who
with.
I was trying to think of. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can sleep now. So
Thank you.
okay. So a couple more things. All right. Not gonna lie. Whenever I heard that there was a child that Orion was being sent to Earth to kill, I thought it was going to be Barda and
Me
Scott
too.
Free's child.
Yep.
So whenever he shows up at the house, I'm like, oh boy. So that was. I guess I'm glad that that is not the case. But that would have been some interesting conflict going on amongst the new gods. So we've already got that a little bit. Now, because Olivia, which is Scott and Barda's child, is part of this story, that seems to imply that the Mr. Miracle 12-issue series is actually part of the DCU proper, because that's where Olivia is birthed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of brings in that Tom King story, which whenever we reviewed that, and it's like, well, is this part of the DCU? Is it its own little thing? So that
I think we'll have to take what we want out of it and leave out what we don't want.
But exactly what they don't
There's a
want,
lot I would want to leave out.
Oh yeah, me too. So, and we'll talk more about this, but the art changes. We got two different artists just for the first 4 pages. I actually, without having read that there was a different artist for the first 4 issues, I might not have even noticed. It's not a dramatic change in art style.
Yeah.
But now that I see it listed, it's like, okay, there is a change of art style there, but later on, when we see some of these other art changes, man, it is very jarring.
Yeah, issue 1 you don't really notice it. Issue 2, you do.
You do, yes.
Yeah.
Speaking of issue 2, are you ready to move on to issue 2?
Absolutely.
All right, so this one has the first 4 pages. Art by Jesse Longeran, and the rest of the book is by Evan Cagle. And these, well, I'll save my comments for later on. So, all right, so beyond the edge of space, we are introduced to Karok Deathspeaker and introduced to his plans of destruction for New Genesis. Highfather awakens from a dream or possibly a vision of what is ahead for New Genesis. On Earth, Scott Free struggles with leaving behind Barda and Olivia, and in fact waits 3 days before writing Barda a note explaining what he is doing and preparing to leave when Barda, dressed and ready, brings Olivia to join Scott on the mission to save the child. Back in India, the parents and the Avatar are attempting to hide from their pursuers but have been discovered by part of Maxwell Lord's mercenary group. Back in the USA, a revitalized Metron, revitalized by Metron, Maxwell Lord is telling Seraphim, one of the Forever people, about how he was revived by Metron. Now Maxwell Lord plans to capture and control the new Avatar. On Apocalypse, Metron speaks with Desaad, who is trying to hold together the forces of Darkseid when the Nikatari, the forces of Karok Deathspeaker, arrive at the planet. All right, so I'll give you the first go on the comments here, Mike.
Okay. Well, just because you just said Niktari, at that point, you don't know what the source of what the origin of that name Niktari is, but just real quick, so Karok Ator or Atard, Karok Deathseeker, whatever, he's making himself to be a pretty formidable foe. And I think it's the stage is being set for him to be the new Darkseid level bad guy. There's the first few pages. I'm with you. I don't like that long art. I forgot how to pronounce the name. That art there doesn't. It's just not as good to me.
It reminds me of Trad Moore. He did a Silver Surfer Black series, and he's done some covers, and it is just incredibly disproportional and odd looking. And I am also not a fan. I'm not a fan of Trad Moore's art, and I'm not a fan of this art from. Let me read the name again. Evan Longeran, I think. Not Evan, because that's the Jesse Lonergan. I can't even pronounce the name. Lonergan.
Now, it might fit in a different story, but since there's already the Cagle art, I just don't. Some of this art, it does remind me of some other artists, but that might work. I think of who was the artist that did like Wonder Woman, Dead Earth, and
Was that Daniel
Daniel
Warren
Warren Johnson.
Johnson?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, he did the Beta Ray Bill story.
Hmm.
I can go with his art if it's all that way and it's
Yeah.
telling a good story and it's done well. But I didn't like how this fit in with the rest of the book. But the Kegel part, there are pages in here that are poster worthy. I
Hmm.
mean that page with Big Barda, that panel where she's the letter in giant letters says Big Barda, and
Yeah.
she's holding Live Free, the baby, and
Hmm.
she's cursing at Scott Free, thinking, when she catches him trying to
Sneak out.
leave to do this job of saving this kid without her knowing about it. I love the way that Astro Harness is designed as almost pure light
Hmm.
on that previous page. There's a lot to like about the art. There's a lot to like about the story. I couldn't remember where Max Lord had been incapacitated to need to be revived with the Omega mark.
Wasn't it Wonder Woman?
Oh,
Didn't
I
he get shot
was
in the
going.
head?
No, that he shot Blue Beetle in the head. It was in Wonder Woman snapped his neck.
Snapped his neck. That's right. Yes.
Yeah, that was
Okay.
back in like around the New 52 era, or maybe right
Hmm.
before it. Um, so yeah, there's just a lot of praise, really.
Hmm.
Seeing Desaad and Mantis, Kanto, all of these. When Metron was talking to Desaad, and Desaad's talking about how he's trying to rally the forces, but all these other, lieutenants of Darkseid are trying to do, you know, they see a power void, so they're trying to move up to the top. Granny, these are all great fourth world characters. Yeah.
It did take me a minute to decide that that was Maxwell Lord. I was questioning whether or not it was supposed to be like Maxwell Lord's son, because he kind of talked about his father there briefly having shot
Yeah.
himself. It's like, okay, so is this Max Lord or is this
Oh,
a
yeah.
child of Max Lord? But I finally landed on it was Max Lord and not a son
Resurrected.
or
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, and Seraphin. I mean, you know
yeah.
who he is, right?
Well, he's one of the Forever people.
Yeah, yeah. And I forget what his power was. Something to do with that bullet.
Yeah.
He's got this bullet, and yeah, I like his design here. He's got like almost one of the eyes is red and one's like cybernetic looking. And he's somehow now on the Maxwell Lord of side of things and maybe being evil.
All right,
That's
issue
all I
three.
had.
All right,
Yeah,
issue
sure.
three. So, okay, art again, primarily by Evan Cagle, though we have subsequences, and I would refer to them as painted sequences of Metron speaking to the Chronicler. All right, so those are by Riccardo Federici.
Yes, I like his
So,
work. Yep.
yeah, so the battle for Apocalypse begins. Meanwhile, Metron visits with the Chronicler. The Chronicler tells Metron of Arbor Struda, Paruzum, and Niktar, with reference to the armies in the previous issue. Back on Earth, Scott, Barda, and Olivia meet with Oberon, who has a way to send them to the source signal from the Avatar. Oberon plans to join them to take care of Olivia. And I do like live as opposed to, I keep saying Olivia in my notes, but I like live free as opposed to Olivia
Oh yeah,
free.
I hadn't
So,
even thought of that. That's
yeah.
cool.
The Chronicler continues his tale to Metron of how Parzurum had split his mind into two, Modar and Paytar. Modar arrives at New Genesis, but Paytar arrived at Earth and brought them fire and tools, kind of a Prometheus figure. As Paytar died thousands of years later, he left a weapon, a child he powered with his final breath to protect the planet if it were ever in need. To wit, in the time of this story, an archaeologist discovers the child. The Niktari have defeated the forces of Apocalypse and now set their sights on New Genesis. Back on Earth, Scott and Barda arrive just in time to stop another attack on the Avatar. All right, Mike, I'll give you again first shot at the comments here.
And I'm glad you did the synopsis because this one would have been a little bit more work, I think, just because you got a lot of new uh,
Hmm.
a lot of new lore. That's why the whole idea of
Yes.
having the chronicler, which I thought was a new character too, but apparently he's not.
Not. No, that's what
Um,
you told me. I
yeah,
thought I thought it was as well.
yeah. But so I this is the one issue I would probably could benefit from reading not just two but maybe three times. So
Hmm.
the the first of all, in the chroniclers he's talking about Kali Yuga. That is another reference. That's a Hindu mythology or religion belief that it's one of the fourth age. It's the fourth and final age of mankind, I guess. So, and then the history lesson on those three siblings
Hmm.
is interesting, and it's also where we see that word rock na rock. They reference that.
Okay.
That's the that's the Ragnarok reference,
Okay.
or at
All
least
right.
that's what I believe. The siblings. Okay, so just to bring it into context, just for everybody here, the one sibling, she has got the big antler sort of head, Arbor Strutta or Struta. She was peaceful, god of nomads and drifters, and then you had Parzurim, which was like the maker and engineer, and then Niktar was the god of the unknown and explorers. So Parzurim made, like you said, Motor and Pater. Now, do you know what Motor and Pater is?
I do not.
I knew I'd read this, or I'd listened to a History of English podcast. Both those mean mother and father in their etymology. The
Okay.
etymology of mother and father is motor and pater. Now, a lot of times pater is spelled Pater, not
Hmm.
Paeter. That's where we get the word paternal from.
Okay.
So, mother, I think we're going to learn. So, these are the mother and father figures that we're going to see in these subsequent issues derived from these two aspects of Parzurim. And yeah, it's Niktar. You see right away how bad this dude is. I mean, he not only killed his sister, but he ate her. And and yeah, so I enjoyed this one almost as much for what it was on its face, but having to go back and see this new sort of history and new characters that are brought in. It's just done, I think, very artfully, as opposed to other stories that we've seen both in the New
Hmm.
Gods or anywhere else where people like creators will just jam stuff at you and throw it at you and just accept it. This seems to give you better understanding and it makes sense. So really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Now, one thing that I have a little bit of confusion about is those three Arbor, Struda, Paruzim, and Niktar. How they fall into the pantheon of the new gods. I feel like they are supposed to be remnants of the old gods.
Oh yeah, they are. Yeah,
Okay,
for sure.
but that goes in. It's in contrast with what Kirby says in the very first issue of New Gods that all the old gods are gone, and then we have the new gods. So this is definitely a retcon that
Yeah,
some of those old gods survived.
yeah, yeah.
Which is again doesn't really line up with what we have in the
Are
first
aspects
book.
of them, but I think
Hmm.
what one of it took me a minute to figure out, were these three sibling gods, were they from the second age, the second world, or the third world? And I think they were from the second world, so they go back even
You
farther
think so?
in
Okay.
time, and it's just there. I mean, because Arbor is dead, Parzurim was basically changed
Hmm.
and into two aspects and buried. The only one you still that actually survives from the beginning is Niktar, I
Niktar, yeah,
guess.
and then of course you have that fourth old god, the I'm looking up her name, Amaxazu.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
could she have even been the first world? I don't
maybe.
know. I don't know. It's it's crazy. So it's not real clear to me where they fall in the you know
Yeah,
in the pantheon, for lack of a better way of describing it. Now the painted so the sequences with the chronicler are it's all painted art, and it
yeah.
is very pretty and very striking. I don't know if I would have wanted to read 6 issues drawn like that,
No, not necessarily.
but I enjoyed it for the chronicler sequences. So it was not. as jarring as it was in issue 2, the change of artists. So I think it kind of gave us a little bit
Yeah.
of a separation there.
And it was appropriate for this being an important issue and separated by what stories they're telling, what, it being a background story.
Yeah, I feel like it was a lot. There was a lot there just to ultimately the only character that's going to matter moving forward is really Niktari, excuse me, and the Niktari.
Well, are the two aspects of Parzarim. It's not the original, but I think.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, a part of that aspect becomes the Avatar, so
Yeah.
we see that.
Yeah.
But
The other one, I think I might predict that the other one is it's the mother box.
Mother box, yeah. Well, and then at some point in New Gods, they introduced the concept of a father box as well. So.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So I don't remember when that was, but I know that it's around now and it wasn't before. So.
Last comment I have is that last page with Barda smashing Maxwell Lord's people's truck and just leaning into it. That's a great picture, and Mr. Miracle's just saying, you boys are gonna be in so much trouble, and there's Big Barda leaning into that truck and crash.
I love Big Barda. She
yeah.
has to be one of my favorite DC characters. And
Yep.
yeah, absolutely love Big Barda. All right, issue 4. Art pages 1 through 3 by Bernard Chang, and then the balance of the story is Evan Cagle again. So the issue starts. We have a flashback to the beginning of New Genesis, as Highfather is with Haman and Atina, god of structures, and they both build New Genesis and reveal the very first mother box. The attack on New Genesis begins with but one defender for the New Gods, Shadowfall, who easily obliterates the first wave of the attack. Highfather instructs that a barrier should be placed around the mother box at the heart of the city, which we saw in the introduction. On Earth, Scott and Barda save the Avatar, but Orion arrives and informs them he should have killed the child when instructed, as New Genesis is now at war because of his delay. Back on New Genesis, as Shadowfall has been able to hold off 2 strike forces, the Karak Death Speaker orders the ships to crash land to create the landing force that they need. Highfather then gives the New Gods full power, the God Surge, as one of his dreams to be a peaceful god comes to an end. On Earth, Barda is able to hold back Orion, but Scott notices some kind of surge of energy, and the Avatar begins to show its power again. On New Genesis, Highfather emerges in full battle armor and orders Light Raid and Akala to clear the field. All right, Mike. Once again, I'm going to give you the floor.
Okay. Well, Guillaume March doing the first 3. I'm not Guillaume March. Bernard Chang did the first 3 pages. I thought it was okay. It was fine. I liked it quite well. It lined up with the style of this book. So. Even though there's been a couple we didn't like so much, this one's it's fine. Gosh, I'm just kind of flying by the seat of my pants right now. The Shadowfall was a character I hadn't seen before. Nope, I don't know that she's new, but man, you want to talk about some cool design and powers, and she's sort of an archer, sort of like a light manipulator, but man, I like that. I just like the way she handled that army. Again, you got Barda and Mr. Miracle they're protecting the kid. They got Oberon that's helping, and Oberon's being portrayed really well too.
Yes.
He's kind of cantankerous, but he's also mischievous too. He's kind of a mix between Mixopidalic and maybe the more serious Oberon that we've seen in the past. So I thought he was really good. Yeah, it's just another good issue for me. I think that page where Orion arrives and he's sort of dragging that staff along the ground and it's creating a gash in the ground somehow. That is really imposing, and that is enough to make a lesser person run for their life. Not Big Barda, though.
Not Big Barda, though.
That's all I got. I enjoyed this issue quite a bit too.
All right, so first couple of times reading through this on that final page where Highfather emerges back from the source, I had to convince myself that that was Highfather. I was not for
Oh yeah,
sure
yeah,
that it was actually Highfather. It doesn't say that it's Highfather. I think we see in the next issue that it is Highfather, so I think my
yeah.
assumption was correct. But no, I tell you what, you were right. Oh, that was the beginning of March was the variant covers. I'm sorry, I thought I'd maybe read that wrong, but never mind. Sorry, back to Highfather. So that kind of threw me for just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I think if they would have showed more of his head, the hair and stuff, it would have been clearer to me. So I kind of
Yeah.
lost myself in the story there just a little bit. Um, Now, this is the thing that kind of bothers me about this issue is that okay, up until this point, the new gods of New Genesis and Dark Side and I'll just say the gods of Apocalypse, they've been kind of very balanced at a standstill in their fight between each other.
Yeah.
So then we introduce this concept here that okay, High Father this entire time has been holding the new gods back power wise,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like okay, because Highfather wants to be a peaceful god, whatever. But that means that if they were pretty evenly balanced, well, it's only because Highfather was holding back the new gods. It's kind of like that whole Superman idea where Superman never goes full on somebody.
Yeah.
So again, that implies to me that the new gods are much more powerful than what Darkseid and his minions are,
Yeah.
if that is the case. So that kind of bothered me just a little bit, but
Well,
it's just like
yeah.
okay, if this has resulted in the death of several new gods, and because Highfather's been holding them back.
Yeah. 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 I don't know. I think we're going to see that he's a fallible
Hmm.
character, that he, as much as he wants to be peaceful and maintain the blissful existence of the new gods and the balance between New Genesis and Apocalypse, self-preservation's going to be his number one no matter what. And that's where I think we're seeing these decisions be made to show that he's not perfect, and maybe there is something to be said about there is a maybe we need a more perfect fifth world if it's possible. But yeah,
All right, issue 5. First 4 pages, art by Andrew McLean, not good,
yeah,
and the balance by Evan Cagle. So this is up there with the Lonergan art. I was not a fan of it, but basically what we have is this issue begins with some flashback sequences of Light Ray speaking with Highfather and Orion and the Black Racer about what happens to a god when they die. So we get a little foreshadowing here. Highfather meets Niktar on the battle, or meets the Niktari on the battlefield, and brings with him the Alpha effect, the spark of creation to use as a weapon against the Niktari. Highfather seemingly obliterates the Niktari, but as he turns from the battlefield, they reform. Barda and Scott battle with Orion to protect the Avatar. Back on New Genesis, Highfather battles with the Niktari and is defeated. The Niktari introduce Graven, the son of Darkseid, who uses Omega Beams to strike at Highfather, but Light Ray intervenes to save Highfather. Metron tells Highfather that Light Ray understands his fate and that they must escape to Earth. Light Ray is killed by Karok Deathseeker as the remaining New Gods flee. As Scott and Barda continue to battle Orion, the Justice League arrives.
yeah. Well, I agree with you on the first 4 pages.
Yeah.
I can't even figure out why they would pick that artist. Maybe that
Hmm.
fits somewhere in some book in some story, but not this one. And it's not for me.
It looks like I'm not to. It looks like art for an independent book. It doesn't look like
Yeah,
art for
yeah,
a DC.
yeah,
And especially not a typical superhero type story.
yeah. It's almost like if somebody was saying whether their kid was rendering trying to tell a story, and you're seeing it through their eyes almost, because it's very, I don't know, just simplistic. But anyway, I don't want to dwell on that. I want to dwell on some of the other really cool
Yes.
aspects. I mean, you're seeing the new gods come together trying to defend this invasion of this real deal villain Karak Ator, you know, that and you think, okay, we're in trouble. Then we get Highfather uses that power staff and just obliterates him. But you know that's not going to be the end of it. You just know it is. And sure enough, the very next page they start reforming using this darkness power that Niktar had, and it's it's scary. I mean, this guy is like, okay, we're in trouble here. Yeah, it seems having read the Starlin version of Death of the New Gods, this seems like it being done right. I don't want to see Light Ray be gone forever. I like that character, but does have the most emotional resonance whenever he dies because he was, and to know that he was going into it, with full
Fully
knowledge
aware.
of what
Yeah.
his fate was going to be. The foreshadowing of this was done really well by Ramvi.
And if it had been drawn, that first 4 pages had been drawn better. I think I would have enjoyed that little
Yeah.
excerpt a little bit more because this really ties back to that
Mm-hmm.
Black Racer issue, where it's like, okay, you know, Light Ray and Black Racer, they're going to race, and eventually, one of them's going to win,
Yeah.
and that's
Right.
when he's going to find out what happens when a new god dies because
Yeah.
Black Racer is going to finally catch him. So we
I think
have that reference back.
yeah. My favorite panel on this, or favorite page in this book, though, is where Graven, Darkseid's one of his
Hmm.
sons, he's got a version of the Omega beams and the zigzaggy beams coming out, and Light
Hmm.
Ray uses his own eye beams to intercept it before it hits Highfather. I thought that was a great, great image.
Hmm.
I mean, this is why it's hard to explain to non-comic readers what's so great about comics, but it's these visuals sometimes that comes to life, and it's not fleeting like it is in a movie or a TV show. You can sit there and stare at it for a while
Hmm.
and just keep enjoying it. So I enjoyed that. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not. Oh, the Trinity. You got the Justice League, and I
Hmm.
know we'll see more next issue, but I'm normally not one to have them show up in a book, but I have to enjoy this intervention of Superman just stopping Orion in his tracks, and yeah, that was cool. We'll see more of it next issue, but
Yeah.
that was pretty cool.
Well, to me, I kind of have a little bit of an opposite reaction to that. It's like whenever you have, like in the movie The Eternals, okay,
Yeah,
since it is Jack Kirby related, I feel okay talking about it. You have this celestial that's emerging in the ocean. I think it's the Indian Ocean, and it's going to have major ramifications on the planet. And where are the Avengers? Where are
yeah,
all of these
true.
other superpowered individuals? Well, here you have, the Avatar and Source Power showing up on planet Earth, but what, the Justice League doesn't show
Yeah,
up? Then that doesn't
right.
really make any sense in a universe at large where these characters, should be
Yeah,
aware of what's going on. So, in a sense, I'm glad that they showed up because it actually makes this a cohesive, makes it a cohesive universe and a story that, tries to, in the current DC universe, what's actually going to happen.
yeah, yeah. I agree. Totally agree.
Let's see. I think I had a couple more comments about this one. No, I've already said the thing about Light Ray and Black Racer. So,
Okay.
all right, final issue for our review, issue 6. And I'm just going to say up front, this was a bad one to end on.
Uh,
All right. Um, a large portion of this book is watercolor by Felipe
Andrade.
Andrade, and the balance is by Evan Cagle, and it is a very pastel watercolor.
Mm-hmm.
And I do not have a lot of comments about this, so this is going to be my short review. So apparently, Light Ray dies. I have a question mark there because we know how that is
Mm-hmm.
in the comic book universes. And then it switches over to this sequence where all the watercolor painted, and it is very difficult to follow. Some of the characters, I'm not 100% for sure who some of the characters are, because of how they're drawn and they're stretched out. And,
Mm-hmm.
we have a lot of Black Racer. But let me get back to my notes here. Light Ray dies defending New Genesis. We see some story with Black Racer. Highfather is able to allow some or most of New Genesis to escape to Earth, and the Justice League join the story. The end.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's To me, that's basically what happens in issue 6. So I'll let you talk about issue 6, and then I'll put my 2 cents in.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. I'm not a fan at all. Even though I liked Felipe Andrade in his collaborations with Romby in the past, this watercolor way of doing it, I'm not a big fan of. It is a little bit harder to follow. I mean, essentially, we're going to find out that, well, even the Black Racer is finding out that there are powers that he will have to answer to, and that maybe that Light Ray's death won't be so definitive. And yeah, it's kind of wonky that way. I'd rather just kind of, can somebody give me the Cliff Note version of that part, and then let's get on to the Evan Cagle art. And we have apparently a new Black Racer that's coming to the fore with a guy named, let's see here. I thought I seen the name here somewhere, but he's he's sleeping, and he dreams of, it's in Texas, and he dreams of no, an endless descent, no sky above, no ground below. And I wanted to say his name was
Otis Tennant.
Tennant. Okay.
Yeah, it's in
And
the top.
there
It's
it
in that
is. Yeah.
panel where it says
Gotcha.
Van Horn, Texas. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it looks like there's going to be a new, I guess, host for the Black Racer entity. And yeah, I'd say the last part, the part with the Justice League, is my favorite part, because now we're seeing some new gods I didn't know about again. We got this one that is controlling the ship in their escape, Najan, I think's his name, to Earth. And yeah, and it's got the Justice League cooperating to keep them from crash landing. I dug that, but it was only like 4 pages, and I'm like, man, I wish the whole issue was like this. So hopefully we'll see more of that, in the subsequent, well, the next 6. It sounds like we're gonna get at least of this story.
Yeah, I was so that the watercolor, like I said, I had trouble defining some of the characters. I had to really stop and think about it. It's because they weren't their traditional color set. Black Racer is drawn with a cape, without a cape, carrying a scythe, not carrying a scythe, with
Yeah.
skis, without skis. There was just no consistency in those panels. So it was a very, very uh, big change art wise. And
Yeah.
if this had been the first issue,
You might
I
have
would
kept
not
reading.
have won. I would not have continued on this series. I mean,
Yeah.
just flat
If that was
flat
the
out.
art all the way through, yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah,
But
I
yeah.
would have said nope, not for me. It's just like I'll just remember fondly my early Jack Kirby New Gods and just go on with my life and not
Yeah.
read this. So, but yeah, the watercolor was very very difficult to follow.
Yeah.
So again, this does tie back to that New Gods issue 3 with the again Light Ray and Black Racer race, but this
Hmm.
time Light Ray loses. Um,
For now.
I don't. It can. Most of this issue just felt like filler. That's the whole watercolor sequence. Just felt like filler. To me,
Yeah. If
so.
it seemed like it was, it could have been told a little bit. I don't know. I just, yeah. I mean, I don't think it's not dissuade me from finishing this series at all, unless I
No,
find
no.
out that Andrade's going to do this watercolor style all the way through.
Every
But
issue, yeah.
yeah, but I get what they were. We're finding out so much uncertainty about death when it comes to these gods. Going to the source, we've heard so many times that what happens when you die, you go back to the source, and
hmm
there are very few exemptions, but apparently there are exemptions.
Um, so several years ago, I was at a convention and I had my sketchbook with me, and there was an artist there by the name of Frank Fosco, and I think this was again going back to that Kirby Evanier book. It's like he had done some type of connection, either had done some art at some point or something, I think, with New Gods, or maybe just because I was on a Kirby kick at the time. So I hand him my sketchbook and say, hey, just give me something New Gods. And he's like,
Yeah.
okay, all right. So here I am. I'm expecting to see come back and get Mr. Miracle or Orion or Black Racer or Darkseid or whatever as the sketch. And would you like to guess who is drawn onto my page?
I have no idea.
Light Ray. So I get a Light Ray sketch.
I would like
That's like
that.
it's. I mean, it's fine. And now in hindsight, I'm happy with it. But it's just like
Yeah.
at the time, I was like, man, out of all the New Gods, you choose Light Ray. But he obviously becomes very important to the story, and he is meant to be the, I guess, the New God that kind of retains his purity through all of this, because there are tasks that High Father does not want to send Light Ray
Right.
on. So
Yeah.
it's anyway, I just had to throw that in there just a little bit.
Yeah. No, that's a cool story.
So I don't know. You got any closing thoughts on this comparison between New Gods?
I think they serve each other well. Of course, Kirby didn't know about this 2024 project when he was living, but I think he would have if he did know about it, he would be somewhat happy with the way it's turning out. That his creations have mostly withstood the test of time.
Yeah.
And even when there's like a not so great idea spun out of his creations, usually the fans are the ones that tell the companies and the creators, "Nope, that's not the way to do it," and they reverse course. But I think Rom V, this might be his time to really shine in more of the mainstream. And while I thought the Detective Comics was too dense, seems to be perfect for him. It's dealing with deities.
Mm-hmm.
He seemed to, he was really into that on Many Deaths of Layla Starr. I think this is his jam. I think I'm glad this is under his, that he's the one at the helm with it. And the art, Cagle is the new one that I'm going to have to pay attention in our preview, pre-order stuff to see if I see any more Evan Cagle stuff out there.
Okay. All right. Well, do you want to sneak in a CLZ Shake before we wrap up this episode?
Sure.
So, all right. Well, I got my phone ready here, so I'll go ahead and start where you're getting things out. And oh, look at that, Star Wars.
That's
It's
from
Star
the
Wars.
80s, 1980s
Yeah.
Star Wars.
So this is issue number 56. So we've got a little rebellion on Cloud City going on here. So we got Lobot on the cover, fighting against Lando Calrissian. So I actually have the complete run of Star Wars in my collection, 1 through the 108. The extra issue, I think it was 10. Was it 107? I think it was 107 issues originally, and then they added the 108. Much later on. So.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how many. I knew it was a pretty long run.
Yeah, written by Dave McElhinney, penciled by Walt Simonson.
Okay.
Inked by Tom Palmer. So
That's
there you go.
Good team, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And okay, well, we have here a wonky issue of the Doom Patrol.
Oh.
If I gotta get my specs out to read it closely, this is issue number 89 from August of 1964, written by Arnold Drake and drawn by Bruno Premiani, which were the creators of the Doom Patrol back when it was My Greatest Adventure. And you had the main characters of Negative Man, Elastigirl, Robot Man, and Chief. And it's it's a minor key. Based on that cover, can you tell me, well, you can't really see it's always too bright.
Yeah. Well, I recognize that cover because it got him split in half with the monster on one side but I do not remember. I don't know why that's a minor key.
You probably would if you had a better vision of it, but it's the first appearance of Animal Vegetable Mineral Man.
Oh, I wouldn't have got that. No.
It's the classic character that's probably going to be featured in his own movie soon.
Well, he was part of the Doom Patrol series on HBO Max.
I never finished that, so might
I
have
didn't
missed
finish
out
it
on
either,
that.
but he did show up. So.
Okay. Yep, that's what I had. That's it.
All right. So, Mike, do you know what's coming up on episode 214 of the Campus
Well,
Comics Cast?
well, it's going to be our standard monthly review of upcoming comics, and we'll go through all of the catalogs. And
Well, not
try
all
to.
of them. We'll go through.
Oh, we won't talk necessarily.
No,
We may
no.
different depths. We may.
Yes.
I try to take a glimpse of at least some of it, some of the bigger ones. But yeah, we will definitely do our due diligence in giving readers and buyers recommendations if you trust us, and we hope that you do. And
And if you
keep buying
follow along,
comics.
yeah, if you follow along, we're going to do the Next Phase catalog and the Panels catalog because Next Phase has the DC and Image books, and the Penguin Random House panels will include the Marvel stuff. And then if we happen to see anything on the pull box site, which really the only thing that would be there that we couldn't see someplace else, should be Dynamite. But I don't. Maybe we'll throw in that. However, just as a side note, I have seen a lot of posts on Facebook and other social media. I shouldn't say a lot. I've seen some posts on Facebook and social media that comic shops are not getting shipments from Diamond this week. So that may be a sign of something to come. So if you are a big fan of some of the back of the book for preview stuff, you may have to figure out another way to get those comics.
Yeah.
So, all right. And Mike, if somebody wanted to reach out to you besides podcasts at bergcomics.com, how might they do that?
Well, by email, it's Mike at comicshoproadshow.com. By social media, I just stick with the Facebook page for Campus Comics Cast. We have places you can put. Scott always posts our new episodes there, and you can comment as you like, and we hope that you do.
And I'm Scott Reed. You can find me at bergcomics.com, BURG comics.com, where there will be links to my social media pages and eBay store, and we'll be back soon with pre-orders.
I wonder how many milliseconds we are apart when we do that.
I don't know.
Because you're never going to be exact. Because
Okay, it actually is not recording off of my. Hold on, I'm gonna
stop the sound recorder.
see if I can. No, I'm gonna see if I can switch. I'm just gonna see if I can switch in Discord. And then, okay, can you still hear me?
Yeah, but it's a little bit fainter.
Really?
Yeah.
How about now?
That's better, I guess, yeah.
How about now?
Okay.
I gotta be careful because I feel like before when I was using this one, if it was too close to my mouth, it really got really loud.
Yeah, the
So I gotta find
consonants
that.
too. Yeah, I move mine up a little bit so we're down sometimes.
I can always adjust it a little bit
Okay.
in Audacity. But okay, now we make sure sound recorder is still recording. Test. Okay, looks good.
Yeah, what effects do you do in Audacity? Do you do like a limiter to take out the spikes? Do you do the
Nope.
do you do the sound or the volume normalization? No.
Nope.
So what do you?
The only thing I ever do if I feel like one of us is faint, over on the left-hand side of that one, there's an option to increase the decibel level. So I'll increase one of our decibel levels if one of us is fainter than the other. And then if there's, I'll mute sections sometimes if there's like too much background noise or, when you let fly the profanity or whatever.
Never.
It's minimal.
Yeah.
I don't want to spend a lot of time doing that.
But I guess I don't know what the tracks look like on your end of it. Are they two separate tracks for me and you through Discord?
Yep.
Oh, well, that makes it. Yeah. So you can just select my whole side of my whole track, increase the decibel.
Mhm.
Oh, nice.
Let me show you, since we're sharing screens.